Segregation, whether the results of stares or attitudes, creates harmful myths and stereotypes. Worse, it sets up a self-fulfilling prophecy for failure. That disabled people are invisible or separated is proof they do not need inclusion or are not even capable or worthy of it. Most people assume that disabled children are excluded from school or segregated from non-disabled peers because they cannot learn or because they need special protections. So too, the absence of the disabled coworker is considered confirmation of the obvious fact that disabled people cannot work. Cities, rather than put wheelchair lifts on all buses, establish parallel paratransit systems of vans, separate and unequal transportation, since these first-come, first-served systems usually require passengers to reserve a ride at least 24 hours in advance. In most cases, a non-disabled person is not allowed to ride in the van with a disabled friend. Those with autism are usually the most segregated of all. Because people with autism are the most difficult to serve, they are the first to be written off. They were discarded because autism is a rare and lifelong brain disorder with no known cure. They were ignored because some can barely speak and are seemingly unable to communicate with others. Many seem trapped in their own world of fears and visions. Some scream, yell, bang their heads, or engage in other self-injurious behavior when they are frustrated. Yes, autism is a perplexing and difficult disability. But people with autism are not, as tradition has it, to be regarded as sick. Nor is it realistic to insist that they have to be cured of bad or different behaviors as a prerequisite to living among others. Agitated behaviors are not pathological, but rather a frustrated effort to communicate. People with autism should be placed in real jobs and taught meaningful work skills. It is up to coworkers and neighbors to accept them, or at least tolerate them. For the first half of the century, Americans with intellectual disabilities, mental illness, cerebral palsy, and until as of the late 1940s, epilepsy, were viewed as a menace that threatened to lower the health and intelligence of future generations. As a result, these people with disabilities were segregated in isolated institutions. There, they lost control of their lives and their liberties solely by virtue of their disability. Following World War II, disabled people were no longer treated as threats, but as patients. They were considered sick people in need of help, education, and correction, not elimination. For those so sick they could not be cured, institutions were considered compassionate places that provided food and shelter. Neither treatment nor activity was prescribed, since it was assumed that no benefit would come of it. When doctors label someone as mentally ill or intellectually disabled, that label is a direction to the public to consider that person a deviant who should be segregated. Non-disabled people have been conditioned to consider labeled people as hopelessly ill and of no potential. A child placed in an institution would make little progress because instructors would expect little of him, and he in turn would expect little of himself. It is better to see the person as deserving, like everyone else, of the same right to full participation in society. That means an opportunity for the same education, work, and even for love and marriage. Today, families get support like respite care and other social services, as well as the right to put their children in public schools so that disabled children can grow up at home. Congress passed a federal law in 1975, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, which guaranteed an education for the nation's 8 million children with disabilities. Public Law 94-142, otherwise known as the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, was the disability movement's Brown versus Board of Education. The law requires teaching disabled students in the least restrictive environment, that is, with non-disabled children whenever possible. Studies have shown that disabled children master social skills far more easily when they go to school with non-disabled children. In addition, other classmates learn empathy, and many take on a sense of responsibility for helping a disabled classmate.